All right, I have a question for you that I want you to think about in regard to taking any action with your assets. And the question is, what does this do for me? So before you take any action in regard to your assets, you're going to ask yourself, what does this do for me? And of course, expand on that a bit. What does this do for those that I care about? Because so often people will just do something. It may seem simple, but it really doesn't do what you want. And there can be some problems with the action once taken. So before you take action, you're going to ask yourself that question. And last video, I talked about assets, debts, liabilities, and potential future unknown liabilities. And I want us to be more strategic when it comes to taking action with our assets. What do we want out of something? What do we intend for ourselves and for those that we care about before we've taken any action so that we can take better action? Let's run through just a few examples. So the first is with loans versus gifts. Sometimes people will provide funds to other individuals and they do not know what they intend out of it. Did they intend a loan or did they intend a gift? They may kind of think one or the other, but they're wishy-washy and they don't want to call it what it is. Or maybe in their mind, they're thinking, I really want this paid back, but I'm going to be kind of tiptoey about it. I don't want to do anything formal. Well, what happens into the future? We've got a big potential future unknown liability as far as whether the funds will be paid back. And what happens if something happens to the person who's supposed to pay the funds back? Who else knows about this whole arrangement? And would they even follow through with it? We have nothing legally in place that will provide for what this is supposed to be. And on top of it, it could actually cause problems for the person who provided the funds. If they think in their mind it's a loan, but it's forgiven or it's really not paid back with applicable interest, there's some tax liability for that person. And I'm sure they weren't even thinking of that at the time they provided the funds. And this just happened with a client the other day where certain funds were provided to the adult child to purchase a home. And it was supposed to be a loan, but there was nothing in writing in that regard. And the person wasn't even aware of the various issues in regard to providing funds to another person. If it's a gift, we need a gift tax return. If it's a loan, then we need to have a promissory note with applicable interest. And we should have security arrangements in place, collateral in the event of default, and so on. Because we're talking problems both on the personal side within the family context and on the financial side as well. What one person thinks is an asset could actually be a liability. So for that parent providing funds, there's some liability in regard to what he did without having those legal arrangements in place in regard to his personal income tax situation. As well, what he thinks is going to be repayment on this loan may in actuality not be the case. And his finances, therefore, are affected because of it. What he has coming to him as sort of this asset is really, in fact, nothing, or if you want to call it just a debt that's not going to be satisfied. So we have to get clear on what we want. And one way to do that is to ask ourselves, what do you want out of this for yourself and for those that you care about? And then be strategic in calling it what it is and getting the arrangements in place. Now, besides the family context, when it comes to providing funds, we can also see this in the business context. And do you think that there are business people who don't do the right thing and get those legal arrangements in place? They just provide the funds first and then go, whoops. Yeah, of course, it happens. And I feel so bad for so many people who look back at some action taken and go, ooh, yeah, I don't know. I should have done that. I didn't think of it, or I just thought everything would be okay. So again, it's very important for us to be more proactive with our planning, make better decisions. One way to do that is to ask yourself this great question: what do I want out of this? Now let's think of another example, and that's with joint accounts. Sometimes two individuals will hold assets jointly. And we have to remember that joint account owners could have creditors, right? Each joint account owner's creditors could seek the joint account to satisfy the what is owed the creditor. And that could be a real big problem. So you go into it thinking, well, I have this asset jointly held with this individual, but remember, potential future unknown risks. What if one of the two has creditors that come in the mix? What if one of the two gets sued? What if one of the two goes through a divorce? What if one of the two wants to apply for public benefits or financial aid? Now what? So before we take action, then we're saying, what do we want out of this? And perhaps the better, smarter move, let's say in this situation, would be to have a joint bank account with just minimal assets that cover paying customary bills, because that's what you really wanted for that part of your arrangement with this individual. But then you really want something else when it comes to your big assets. You want to make sure that they're protected from certain scenarios. You want to have arrangements in place that are going to be very beneficial for yourself and for those that you care about. So you're going to set up a trust, and you're going to have it set up a certain way. And everything that really should be in that trust as far as larger assets is going that way. So again, it's being strategic from the get-go. What do I want out of this? If I want help in paying bills, fine. We'll do something small in that regard as far as having a minimal account for that. But when it comes to those bigger assets, and we know that we're going to be concerned about the future, we're going to set things up differently. Because often I can see people think they have an asset, and we creep into something other than an asset. It becomes like a liability because of some of the risks involved. And I'm talking even risks in regard to family relationships. How are other people seeing things? Do they even think that one of the joint account owners, let's say, is doing something suspicious and it's causing grief among all the family members and so on? So there's a lot at play when it comes to thinking about your assets and what's going to be beneficial for yourself and for those that you care about. Now, let's just take one other example for now, and that's real estate. Real estate's such a big one. And oftentimes people go ahead and they purchase real estate without asking themselves a very big question. What do you want out of this? You know, even for residential real estate that you're going to use as your principal residence, before you even purchase it, you can set up a trust, and then you can have the real estate in the trust, because what do you want out of it can mean that you want to plan better for yourself and for your loved ones. And you're going to do that from the get-go, because it can't otherwise be done, let's say, into the future, because there's going to be some other arrangements in place that are prohibitive. Or let's say that you're going to have investment real estate or out-of-state real estate. Well, those have certain risks associated with them that we really need to plan for. We really need to make sure, let's say, that we've got an entity structure that's going to keep our other assets separate from any risks associated with this real estate, whether it's a trip and fall or tenants or what have you. And of course, we also think about property management. And we want to make sure that we've got the right person managing property, both during our lives and then upon our passing. And so for that reason, we really do set up other arrangements like an LLC to hold the real estate, and then we can have a trust owning the LLC. Now, oftentimes I see people owning real estate together. Let's say we have siblings. Let's say we have extended family members or friends or whoever owning real estate together. And there are a lot of headaches involved in that. Who's paying for maintenance and upkeep? Who is doing the maintenance and upkeep? Who's paying the taxes? Who's paying the hazard insurance? What if there is going to be a problem with the real estate itself? How is each person able to plan for their own portion of the real estate? If we have tenants in common and each person owning a part of the real estate, are they able to gift their part of the property to anybody, or what happens if they pass, what happens if they file for bankruptcy, and so on. So real estate's a big one, and you have to, again, ask yourself, what do I want out of this before you take action? So hopefully you can be more strategic as far as how you move forward. Now, there's some other examples that I'd like to bring out in another video, but I just hope this helps as far as you thinking about taking action in a more strategic, proactive manner with your assets, because we've got assets, debts, liabilities, and potential future unknown liabilities. And believe it or not, they can start blurring as far as what they are, because we're not clear from the get-go what we want out of something and then plan appropriately. So this is Ruth George with Ruth P. George Law, PLLC, Trust and Estate Attorney. This video, as with any video I do put out, is for educational purposes only, and I look forward to seeing you on another video.